Right, we're going to get started, so I'm going to ask everybody to take their seats. Welcome back, everybody. I hope you had an enjoyable lunch. Before we go on to the next panel, I just want to show a short video from one of our platinum sponsors, Sonova.
Sonova, inventor of the unique water-jet laser, presents a revolutionary system for shaping diamonds, Dmcc Diamond Factory. It transforms rough diamonds into brilliant cut diamonds in a single, fully automated process. The Dmcc system includes a CAM software that reads the planning files and defines the facet cutting order for optimum yield. Meanwhile, the planned rough diamond is glued with the table side down onto a flat holder. The visual alignment process follows to perfectly adjust the stone in the machine. The 5-axis system positions the diamond for the shaping operation and starts the fully automated process. The process time per facet averages from 1 to 8 minutes, depending on the size of the diamond. The result, a perfectly shaped diamond with 57 facets. After completion of the Dmcc process, a final polishing step will bring out the desired shine and add the finishing touch. The Dmcc Diamond Factory, your automated shaping solution for round brilliance and fancy shapes.
And as was stated, there's going to be some live exhibitions, live demonstrations of the Sonova machine in Almaz Tower during the week. So now to move on to this next panel, the technology panel as we've referred to it, I'm going to invite back on stage Anish Agarwal, who's going to lead the discussions on how to rethink the diamond supply chain. Anish.
Thanks a lot again, Martin. I hope you all had a great lunch and that you've still got some appetite left over for this next panel. We've had 2 really interesting sessions around COVID in the future and around the new consumer and lab-grown diamonds. This next panel is going to be about technology, which, as we know, is all around us. It affects the way we all live our lives. It affects the way businesses do business. It can make some business models obsolete. It can create new business models. It's impossible to have a conference about the future of the diamond industry and not expect technology to have a say in how that future is shaped. When you think about it, lab-grown diamonds themselves are a technology play. What we're going to do in this session is focus on midstream technology, which is where many of you sit. In particular, we're going to look at the process of diamond manufacturing, the idea of turning a rough diamond into a polished stone that sparkles. That's a core part of the supply chain. It's the heart of our supply chain, and it's an important area of development. At our last conference, we put a lot of emphasis on technology disruption in the midstream because we saw it as a silent disruptor. It's a series of small incremental changes that creep up on you, and taken together, they've got a game-changing impact. Compared to 15 years ago, you can make a bigger, brighter, more sparkly, better quality polished diamond from the same piece of rough. But at the last conference, we went further than this because we saw potential for manufacturing technology to become a sudden disruptor. There were some really big claims made, like it's possible to cut and polish a diamond completely within a day. That was one claim. Another claim was it's inevitable that diamond cutting and polishing and grading will become fully automated. When we introduced this topic last time, we gave the example of Adidas, the sports company. And we gave the example that they had come up with these factories that manufactured shoes, sports shoes from start to finish, using robotics and computerized knitting. They'd moved away from low-cost labor centers. Well, it turns out a couple of months after our last conference, Adidas actually closed down these automated factories They moved back to low-cost labor centers. I'm not sure what this tells us, except that the path of technology deployment can be uncertain. That's why it's important to understand where technology stands today, what has happened practically since our last conference, and what's going to happen in the next 2 to 3 years. Listening carefully to the last panel, which I think many of you were at, it's important we need to introduce a new topic today, because it's definitely the case that we've got a new consumer reality. Everybody knows that technology can increase efficiency. It can save you time and money. It can drive down costs. But what does it do to the consumer offer? We've all heard of terms like blockchain and traceability. What do they mean? Where does technology fit in? What does it do to what we offer to the consumers? And actually, what's even the best supply chain to have from a consumer perspective? This conference is about helping businesses prosper. That's why it's going to be important to understand what has happened with technology, how it's going to evolve, and where we expect the supply chain to be in a couple of years' time, so we can navigate it and we can profit from it. To answer these questions, I'm going to invite on stage 3 leaders of their field. I'd like to invite Bernard Richtershagen, CEO of Sonova, that's got automated technology in play. I'd like to invite David Block, who many of you know as having key instrumental technology in the supply chain. And finally, I'd like to introduce Rafael Papismidov, who's managing partner of HB Antwerp. Welcome. If you would come up. Good to see you, David. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. We're, as always, excited to have you here, and inevitably new things are going to be said that we've not heard before. I'm going to dive straight into the issues around technology and what was said at the last conference. We are going to talk about the consumer, but that's going to come a bit later. I think the first thing we need to understand as a group is where technology stands and what's happened since our last conference. Bernard, at the last conference, you were very bullish about automated manufacturing, and you've got your own Dmcc machine, but the question I'd have is what has practically happened in the last 2 years? How much progress have we actually made on automated technology?
Okay, thank you. Yes, it's true. 3 years ago, we announced the technology, the fully automated cutting and shaping. So during the last 3 years, we went through the pandemic as everyone, and we used this time very efficiently. That means we improved the system, improved the machine, added new functions to the software. So nowadays we can cut any shape on this machine, fancy shape, but even arbitrary shapes. We have shown it, and even these new shapes are in production today. So that's the next point. We have put a limited number of machines into the industry at selected companies, and they use the machine now for a number of months. And the feedback is very positive, so that we got already important orders from them. It was also an important step, so that we can now say we are ready for you, because it's, of course, we have this developed this technology for you, the diamond industry. And now I think it's the time to look a bit deeper into this. As already announced, we have one system here running in the Almas Tower, so everybody can see it live. And we are creating demo centers a bit around the world where people can really see.
So Bernard, just to kind of jump in here, do you now feel we're at that point that you talked about at the last conference, that diamond cutting and polishing is totally possible in a day or even less time?
Absolutely,
are we there?
Absolutely. And that's another thing we have done. We have increased the speed. So we are now at around 1 hour for 1 carat, around brilliant. And it's more or less the same time for fancy shape. diamond. And it takes, of course, a bit longer for larger diamonds. We start from 3-grainer, let's for the moment the minimum, but in the future we'll go to smaller diamonds as well.
So there will be opportunities to talk about that Da Vinci machine in a bit more detail. What I want to do is just understand how quickly you think technology like this will get adopted, either your technology or something similar. Before you answer that question, David, I want to introduce you. Welcome. A question for you is, do you still think it's inevitable that manufacturing technology, automated manufacturing technology is going to happen? How quickly do you think this will get adopted by the industry?
So first of all, great to be back here after 2 years. And I think the simple answer is yes. Inevitably, manufacturing will become more and more automated. And I think it's not only a matter of the development or the evolution of the technology, but more of the need of the market. So in order to create the ability for our market to meet the changing demands, especially we talked about the consumer earlier in the previous sessions, technology will fill that gap in order to create that need. So I think it's a matter of time, on one hand technology, on the other hand a matter of adoption. The adoption of new technologies does take time, so it's not a matter of having just a good technology or technology that does what it needs to do, but also training the market, adapting that to the market needs, and enabling the market to adopt that technology.
Thanks, David. And Bernard, back to you now that you've had a chance to think about it. At the moment, right, automated technology is not that common. It's isolated. If you were to take a view on this, how many years, don't say months, but how many years do you think it would take for the majority of the world's diamond manufacturing to be automated above a certain size? Let's call it 1 carat rough.
Yeah. I like to compare it a bit with the moment when the combustion car has replaced the horse coaches more than a century ago. In the beginning there was a lot of skepticism, and people didn't believe that this new thing would really totally change the world and change the way to move. And I believe the automation of cutting and polishing will do the same. In some way, we can say we catapult the diamond manufacturing industry, sorry to say that, but from the Stone Age to the future with that technology. I think, as everyone knows, manual polishing is a very, very old technique. It has improved, of course, over time. But now with the new possible technologies like the laser, especially the water jet guided laser, it has now the potential to totally change the way to produce diamonds.
Hold that thought, that's really interesting. We're going to come to that, but I want to give Raphael a chance to come in here as well, because HB itself has adopted quite a lot of automated technology in its own operations. Raphael, why did you do this? Why did you think it was important?
First of all, we believe that innovation is always a driver for creating something better. And we wanted to establish ourselves, first of all, in Antwerp. In order to be competitive and productive, we had to integrate a lot of technology. So that's why we took over the R&D facility, and we are introducing robotics and everything into our facility. We're also using other technologies from those two gentlemen as well in our facilities. So the idea is to integrate as much as possible. But definitely in order to, because we believe that the future is to move manufacturing into the origin countries. We believe that the future lies into bringing Africa innovation, transfer of knowledge, and to help those communities to flourish beyond just the dig and wash operation. So therefore, we are doing a proof of concept in Antwerp, but the idea is fully to move everything into the original countries.
Thanks a lot, Raphael. That's really interesting. We're going to come back to the African component as well. That's a very important part of this conversation. David, I just want to come back to you just so we can scope out for the audience where technology stands. The other thing that we talked about at our last conference was diamond grading, that you thought it would be inevitable that that too would become fully automated. Do you still think that's the case? How do you expect that to change the supply chain?
So that I will put a time frame on, and I believe that's not months away for a large portion of the market to be automated, but very limited number of years, a few years, we're going to see diamond grading moving, I think, very significantly to the direction of automated grading. Over the last 2 years, since the last conference, we've been working diligently in order to move that forward, both in terms of the technology as well as the commercial aspect. And today already there are quite significant quantities of diamonds being graded through automation, through artificial intelligence. So that, I think, is no longer maybe an aspiration that we had 2 years ago, but it's actually now a reality that's starting to be created on the ground.
Thanks, David. I can't ignore what Bernard just said about the Stone Age to the future in one go. The implications of automated manufacturing could be huge. We need to understand what that's going to do to the existing supply chain. Bernard, as we get closer to automated manufacturing, are the existing midstream players, the very well-established companies, are they likely to be the ones that are going to be manufacturing diamonds?
Yeah, that's a very sensitive question. I think, as we just heard before, thanks to the new technology and thanks to the fact that almost everyone can now shape and polish and finish a diamond and make a polished diamond out of a rough diamond, you will see this technology and this new machine everywhere. Now, it will be in Africa for sure. Miners will think about why not adding value to our products, do it locally. Canadian think about a fully made diamond in Canada, again without technology, not anymore shipping diamonds to India, going back, mounting the diamond. It takes time and we lose control, traceability is an issue. And all this can be solved now with automation. India has a lot of course, knowledge in polishing, which is in fact in our machine, the same knowledge. We can adapt the machine very quickly to new shapes. It takes just minutes instead of learning a new shape takes months for a polisher. So I think it's really a game changer, the new technology. And there's still one step which needs experience, intelligence, which is the planning. And planning can be done, again, everywhere. But planning has also its price. So I think planning is something that could be done in the future, offshore, not at the same place. Because it's important, of course, to make the right plan, especially for the automatic shaping, to do it right from the beginning. You can't correct it. No? The machine is doing then what the program has defined. So I think there's still, and it will take, of course, time. And I did not yet respond fully to your question, how much time it will take. I want to finish, the comparison with the car industry. It took more than a decade that, the new technology has been adapted and used. With this technology, it will not take 10 years. It will take less. Maybe, 2, 3, 4 years, I believe it will be necessary.
I want to ask you, David, whether you agree with Bernard, whether you think that the same people, the same businesses will be manufacturing diamonds as automation kicks in the next few years.
So it's important to understand that technology is not a silver bullet. You don't just put a machine, no matter what kind of machine or what technology, and it does everything for you. There's a lot of know-how that goes into using technology to the optimum level. There's a lot of processes that you need to put into place, which are not simple. Every once in a while I get a person calling up and say, I've got access to a source of rough, I want to set up a manufacturing plant, and I smile underneath and it's not a simple process. So on one hand, technology does enable setting up manufacturing in places that are not the typical manufacturing centers. On the other hand, as I said, there's a lot of know-how and experience that is involved. So you will see, on one hand, existing players, I think, expanding globally. That's one option. And the second option is that you will see new entries like HB, for example, that come into the market, utilize technology to the optimum, set up very advanced processes and gain the know-how, and then are able to utilize that technology.
So let's ask Rafi that question, because HB Antwerp didn't exist as a business 3 years ago. What changed in the environment that allowed you to enter the market and bring your vision to the supply chain?
I don't think the environment really changed. I think what changed is that we went for a profound study for a couple of years before establishing HB. And we wanted to study what the consumer is looking for. And we came from there. We understood the consumer, or we hope we understood the consumer. And then we went to build an ecosystem. And the ecosystem is about telling the story of the diamond in the right way. Not that the story is not done right today, but there is a new generation coming, and this generation is going to challenge us. This generation is going to ask questions that never been asked before. So the idea of building a new ecosystem was actually it's not to take something existing and add more layers to it, it's to build something new from the ground. Then the technology is a wonderful tool to make a revolution or to create a new disruption. But it's not enough. The technology needs to be assisted by a vision, needs to be assisted by a profound understanding of the market, and needs to bring real solutions to a generation that is out there, and those are humans that we never knew before.
When you talk about solutions, I guess the question would be, what do you think are the problems that need solving?
Solutions is about mystery. Our industry is not well understood by the consumer. The consumer has been educated for the 4 C's, and the consumer is reaching today to the retail space with a lot of anxiety. He feels that, I don't want to use inappropriate words, but the consumer wants to walk alive out of a store because he doesn't enjoy the experience. That's what our studies are showing. And experience is an amazing experience to see the evolution of a rough diamond into a polished diamond. It's an amazing experience to understand the talent of the humans in Belgium, in India, in Africa, that is involved in the process. And the story is not being told right. So we have to basically redefine the industry, and we have to adapt it to the needs of the next generation. Now, I understood that the Gen Z today is not a big buyer, but the Gen Z is a huge influencer. I mean, we used to listen to our parents in our behavior. And I can tell you now, I have 4 kids. My kids are telling me what is cool and what is not cool, how to behave, how to
I
move,
would say
how
that
to
I'm
dress.
not surprised, but actually I have the same experience.
Yeah, so I think even though the Gen Z is not a major buyer today, the Gen Z is influencing the buyers and will become a major buyer in the future.
I think I want to try to pin Bernard and David down a bit more, because yes, there are many processes that require a lot of know-how, a lot of intellectual capital when it comes to manufacturing. But actually what Bernard, you are saying is that a lot of that know-how is now embedded in your machine. So my question comes back to you. Do you think diamond manufacturing will remain in India, according to you?
You insist really on that.
You've dodged it twice already. We need an answer. Doesn't have to be right, just a view.
Let's say in the following way. But who does not want to produce cheaper, faster, better, more flexible in the future than in the past? So everybody would say, yes, I want. And if I tell you that the machine is twice cheaper than the cheapest manufacturer in India, then I ask you, okay, what's the question anymore? So I can just tell you, nobody will stop. You know, the technology coming into this industry and being used, and I'm sure at the end by everyone, as the car has replaced the horse coaches.
David, you talked about automated grading. I'll ask you to respond to that as well. I want to just, by all means, respond to what Bernard said, but also consider the second question to hold in storage. You also talk about automated grading. what do you think is going to happen to these existing processes involving sending diamonds to the GIA, getting them back? How do you think this, we're trying to get to the bottom of how this supply chain will change at the moment. So that's what we're trying to understand. What's your view on grading and the manufacturing comments that Bernard just said?
So I'll start with the manufacturing, and I think in the end, a large part of manufacturing will remain in India because, as I said, there's know-how and processes. And that's not easy to replace. Technology doesn't simply replace that. On the other hand, there will be a growing, in my opinion, a growing segment of the market that, as Raf mentioned, goes to the producing countries. There's of course a strong interest of the producing countries for benefication, not only in terms of selling the rough, but creating knowledge and know-how and employment within the producing countries. So I think there will be a significant growth of there, and technology, of course, is a significant enabler to do so. So I believe that will happen in Africa. It could happen in other producing countries such as Canada, Russia, and so onwards. So I think that's in terms of manufacturing, but there will be, I think the large bulk will remain. Technology will take time to get to the smaller and cheaper goods, which still are not necessarily cost effective to manufacture with technology at today's price points, but that cost will go down. When you talk about grading, again, I think that the people that currently today are involved in processes that are very repetitive, and there is not a significant amount of value that is added in a very deterministic, repetitive process, will be replaced by technology. And these people or similar will move to other processes that require more input, more human involvement. I would say bifurcate between the graders and the gemologists. So I think the grader of today will evolve into technology, and they will operate technology. And there will be other aspects that will receive more attention by the gemologists. People asked me the same question 10 or 15 years ago with other technologies. And they said, okay, so all the diamond planners are going to disappear. Not only didn't they disappear, they've multiplied in numbers because they are now operating technology, very advanced technology, and their know-how combined with the technology is basically what is providing with a very powerful solution.
We'll come back to that. There are some questions around grading that I want to follow up, but Raphael, you were in one of your earlier responses talking about Africa, and as we all know, a greater proportion of diamonds are being sold in Southern Africa. And how do you think, Raphael, that automated manufacturing will affect the beneficiation objectives, particularly in Southern Africa, but elsewhere as well? But as you mentioned Africa, to focus on that for a moment.
I think it will mainly affect the future of the youth of Africa. The youth of Africa is looking for a direction. It's looking for solutions. Currently, most of the efforts in the diamond industry in Africa are mainly in a cheaper labor. Obviously, in the mining, there is a lot of engineering who's been used. But if you go to a country like Botswana and you see what people are doing for their bachelor and for their masters, they're all doing mining engineering, because that's the only future they can find today in the high-level positions in this industry. So, but bringing robotics, bringing innovation, bringing new technologies, training the youth of Africa, this is the real beneficiation. Beyond the economical beneficiation, it's the future that we are creating for this youth and the transfer of knowledge to those nations in order to give them the capacity to become real players into the luxury markets.
If, though, to kind of just argue the contrary position, if manufacturing is an automated process, how much skill transfer and how much employment do you actually think will get created?
You know, technology, we learned when we use our computer, we use our phone, you get updates every week, every 2 weeks. Technology is not something static. Technology is something that evolves over and over and over again. David can explain much more about the updates that Sarin is doing to its technology on a regular basis. So once you bring the technology, then you have to involve the youth into the R&D, into the next stages of this technology, because they're going to be, I mean, today if you see how much knowledge was acquired in India, thanks to all those machineries that are brought, they brought it into perfection in India. So there is no reason why Africa cannot do the same. And the robotics are not going to replace humans. They're just going to shift the humans from cheap labor to more educated labor. And that's the real future of Africa, in our opinion.
Okay, we can come back to that. And just for the next question, because there'll be a more provocative question in a moment, let's just make a distinction between, for people in the audience, that you can be an Indian diamond company owner today and manufacture in India, but you can also be an India-based diamond company and manufacture elsewhere, right? So a separation has to be made between ownership and operation. Now, with that in mind, the first question for you, Bernard, is, if you've now got automation, where's the best place on earth to manufacture diamonds, right? So we've talked about Africa. Do you see the potential of a made in Switzerland product? Do you see potential of a made in America product, so that the product plays into the American consumer, it creates a different type of supply chain? And keep an eye on what we think would add the most value to the consumer, because that's where the conversation is going to shift eventually. But just for now, if you could, given that you have this technology, given that there's a shift from low-cost labor to educated labor, where do you think is the best place to manufacture diamonds?
Mm-hmm. So I think you said it already. It's, I think the idea is produce locally. And it's an absolute trend everywhere now. That now we see it, for example, in the semiconductor industry, that countries like China, but also Europe, now have seen the need to produce locally chips for the industry, to avoid, dependencies of other countries, of political tensions and so on. But if you can do it in the same country locally, that's always the best solution. And then you can brand it, as I mentioned before, the fully made Canadian diamond. You can do it in the United States. You can do it in Switzerland. And we are in discussion, by the way, in Switzerland already with some people, and think about the idea of Swiss diamonds. Of course, we have no mines in Switzerland, but we have engineers being able to run plasma machines, and then we could imagine that we produce lab-grown diamonds in Switzerland, and do also then the final shaping and mounting of the diamonds. For example, for the watch industry, why not?
No, it's interesting, and I think the provocative question is the one, and I'd understand if you wanted to dodge this, so I'll only push it a couple of times. If diamond manufacturing were automated, who's the right stakeholder to do the manufacturing in the first place?
So I think it will change with this new technology. Change in the following way, that now, miners can, as I already mentioned, add value to their products. We just heard it before, Africa. It's a chance for Africa, I think. It's an opportunity now with this new technology to make really a jump and create high value employments, engineers who would love to learn about the technology and use it, improve it. There's one new market for this technology. And then also on the retail side, because it's fast, it's easy to use, it's individual, you can customize it, you can even show it, you can present it, it can become an experience for the customer, something completely new. Today nobody knows when he's buying in a retail shop a diamond how the diamond is made. Now we just talked about in lunch now time, maybe we should sell the diamond with a video, and show how this diamond has been made. Until now, you get it. So there are plenty of new ideas, I think, coming up, and new customers as well.
Before I go to you, David, and I think Bernard, thanks for attempting to do this. One of the reasons is I'm aware that there are a lot of midstream players in the audience. What we want to do at this conference is to hear these viewpoints. It doesn't mean that anyone is right. It just means that these viewpoints are put on the table for you to consider and evaluate. Because if these points are not put across in an open way, then we all see the future less clearly. That's the challenge. And I think that, or at least the scenarios around the future less clearly. Rafi, I want to pick up on a point that you made. You said that actually that you talked about the benefits to Africa. You talked about how, you know, you're going to get more jobs and more creation. But isn't the issue that with technology that it's less labor intensive? Yes, you will have jobs that are highly educated, highly specialized, that require more experience, more skills, but they'll be smaller in number. Okay, how do you think that gels with the idea of creating employment in these African countries that you talked about?
I think you have to see the whole ecosystem that will be created. Who said that an African man can only manufacture a diamond and then somebody else has to take it from him and sell it in Paris? Why can't he do the marketing himself? Why can't they do branding themselves? I think the understanding is there is going to be a quantum shift in the market. And the quantum shift is coming because of demands that will come from the consumer. The consumer wants to know everything, as we said. And in order to know everything, then he wants to understand what kind of value was created through the product. And I heard in the previous panel about sustainability. I mean, we need to redefine sustainability. Sustainability, maybe if we redefine it as value, it will be easier to digest. It's human value, moral value, economic value. And if we decide that this is the sustainability the way we see it, then maybe we can understand that it's not just about doing a diamond cheaper. It's not about making the diamond faster. This is not supporting the industry. The industry is suffering from the race to the bottom of buy cheap, manufacture cheap, sell cheap. This is not creating a value. But we have to, I mean, you gave the example of Adidas. Luckily, we are in a higher end product. And the higher end product, the game cheap, is not a contribution. The brands who are making the real money in the end of the day in other industries are not saying I'm making my bag cheaper. They are saying I'm making my bag more expensive. They're not saying I'm doing my bag with a cheaper leather or with a cheaper human. I'm doing my bag at the best place, at the best location, with the best value.
One of the questions we didn't ask Stephen Lucier earlier is how does he think diamond jewelry has compared to Chanel handbag price appreciation over the last 2.5 years? We'll park that as a near miss. Please continue.
So, no, but that's a great example. I mean, yes, the industry is doing much better today than expected. Yes, the industry is flourishing in the last couple of months, but we have been on those waves of peaks and lows. And why should we have those lows? If we can manage to create a healthier ecosystem together as an industry. Obviously, solidarity is very important, but we also are competing each other. And that's very healthy. Competition is the best thing for the industry. So the value that will be created, you have to see it in a much broader perspective and something that will answer the needs of the future.
So we've had a couple of different answers here, David. I want your view. Bernard has talked about manufacturing migrating towards producer countries, but also the possibility that it moves towards retail. Raphael has talked a little bit about how when we look at beneficiation objectives, diamonds do good, that we should look beyond the narrow remit of cutting and polishing in of itself, but a wider skill transfer. What's your view, David, with this?
So, first of all, I think they both have a point. So I don't know where the manufacturing will be, but I think there are 3 criteria that I can think of that will impact that. One is the desires of the producing countries. That's what Bernard talked about. There is definitely forces there that want the manufacturing to be done in the producing countries. So I think that is going to happen to some level due to that. Second is the retail, the consumer, and again, maybe Beryl would be better to ask that. There's a retail demand to the story, the narrative about the diamond, where it comes from, maybe how it was manufactured. Maybe it's in its early stages, but the conference is about the future of diamonds, so maybe it's not here today, but it's coming. And I'll add a third perspective to where it's manufactured. In the end, it's looking at the entire supply chain. Today, we have a fairly inefficient supply chain, unfortunately. A lot of goods packed into the supply chain for quite a lot of period of time, dead stock ending up, whether it's in the retail or wholesale. How do we make that pipeline more efficient? And I think that question will determine a lot of how tomorrow's manufacturing looks like. Is how do you create an efficient pipeline enabling you to get to the right polished goods, to the right retail at the right time, adapting to consumer changes in their demand. Today, if the consumer wants a certain quality or type or shape today, there's no way to give it to him. He needs to wait at least 6 months to 12 months for the whole pipeline to catch up. So in making the pipeline a lot more efficient, I think, will be a big parameter in determining how manufacturing looks tomorrow.
I just want to pause for a moment and just talk a little bit about efficiency, because I think it's important that things are a little bit clear, at least for me, and if I can talk through this, then hopefully it will make sense to everybody else. Look, efficiency is about getting, typically in an industry, from getting to the top of the supply chain to the bottom as quickly and as cheaply as possible, right? So if you can get a product from a rough stage to a piece of jewelry without adding much cost, and you can do it quickly, then that's efficient, and the more you can
I
do
think
that,
it's also getting the right product to the right person. It's not only quick and efficient.
Sure, absolutely. So it's about, let's say, there's the time aspect, if you can do that aspect fast, and that's taken on board. And you could argue that the existing supply chain is pretty efficient. You know, they move goods pretty fast. It's fragmented, but it doesn't make it inefficient. But there's a lot of know-how, there's a lot of skills, there's a lot of use of technology. Many of them will tell you that they have to leverage up to make money, and that's proof that they're not adding much cost to the supply chain. So you've got many aspects to this. So for the supply chain to be more efficient than it is now, it would need a change. It would need a step change in the way that supply chain operates. That would be the first point that comes out of this, which is where technology comes in. The second point, though, which is completely separate from efficiency, is the idea of what type of supply chain creates the most consumer value, which is the point that Rafi has put in. And this is, in a way, separate from efficiency, but it's the idea that consumers no longer just care about the product they buy, they care about the way that product came into being. So let's shift our focus just for a moment. We'll pause on efficiency. Let's talk about the consumer. Now, the first thing that I want to ask, probably you, Bernard, is that if you think about high-end products, a lot of the world's luxury, most coveted products are handmade products, right? Some Swiss watches are entirely handmade and they take a year to make. There's a lot of craftsmanship that goes into this. Do you think that there's a risk that automatically manufactured diamonds are less attractive to consumers by virtue of the fact that there's less of a human input into it?
Okay, so fortunately I know a bit the Swiss watch industry, and I think it's just a dream, or that you think they work, they mount the watches by hand. I say, look on Rolex. I don't know how many, if you know how many Rolex watches are made in the year, and how they are made. So it's really an extreme example, certainly, the Rolex watches, because they achieved to combine a really high luxury product and brand with a high volume, high mass product and production. So it's absolutely possible to sell a product that is not anymore made in a way like a century before, but still the most important for the customer is not that. Is the brand. I wear a Rolex watch with the logo and so on, and it represents wealthy and success. So that's much more important than is it the machine that is has now made this diamond. And then you can also use some arguments in favor to the machine, because when you show them the truth, how sometimes the conditions are of the people polishing this diamond, maybe the customer doesn't want anymore this diamond. So it's rather we want them to tell the truth, and why not telling the truth with a video and show him, okay, that's the technology that is used to make your diamond.
Okay. No, I mean, that's interesting. And just before we go further on that, David, you talked about diamond grading, and you talked about the issue that diamond grading will evolve. It will become automated. We don't know when, but at some point in the future, the existing processes probably won't be the way they are today. But isn't the issue that, there are two ways of looking at grading. One is that actually you get to know the 4 Cs, and that's great, but maybe it's also not great. It's got its own challenges, but you define diamonds using the 4 Cs, using grading. But also there's the issue that grading certificates or reports are a trust aspect, right? Consumers want a GIA cert today. Retailers want to buy a GIA cert. how do you expect automation, and that trust takes years to build, by the way, so, and it's quite well entrenched at the consumer level, the retailer level, and even at the midstream level. How do you expect automated grading to play into that reality?
So, in the end, today's consumer, we talked about Generation Z and, of course, the millennials that have been talked about a lot, trust technology. And if we look at today's or tomorrow's consumer, their trust in technology is very, very high. So no doubt that today, I would say more the industry itself has that high level of trust. The consumer is much less educated, understands a lot less about who the different entities are within the industry. And therefore, I think that once you reach the consumer and you create an understanding that the grading is done through technology, well tested and used by leading brands, you will gain that trust very quickly. I think that's just how things will evolve, and I think it will happen very quickly. Unlike creating a brand where you need to create years it takes years to create that trust, I think through technology that level of trust will be created very, very quickly.
Okay, no, that's interesting. And Raphael, a question for you. When we look at grading, how do you think diamond grading plays a role in making the product more valuable, especially at a consumer level?
I think for the consumer it's very confusing, because imagine a consumer walks into one of the largest brands, Cartier, Chopard, all those big brands of the world. In the end of the day, he walks in with a product that has been validated by somebody else. So what does it show? It shows one thing, that most of the people involved in the supply chain did not really invest enough time to learn the consumer needs. And then the people who are selling directly to the consumer, the brands, do not really understand the product they are selling. Because if they would understand perfectly the product that they are selling, they will not use a third party to validate it. And because they are not involved in the making of the diamond, their involvement is putting a piece of metal on the diamond. So for them, they are trying to create the diamond into a commodity, a flawless commodity that is just about price. And for us as an industry, we have to learn how to make a decision. And they say either differentiate or discount. So we have to learn how to step out from the market of discounts and move into the market of value.
What's the alternative practically today? So let's say that we have an existing grading infrastructure. Tomorrow we might have a revised grading infrastructure, but it's still grading nonetheless. And we'll talk about blockchain in a moment, David, so I'll give you a chance to talk about the traceability piece in a moment. But just on grading itself, what's the alternative if we believe, or it could be the case, that grading commoditizes diamonds?
The alternative is disruption. The alternative is for new players to step in and to take ownership on the whole process. This is way beyond the vertical integration that was tried a couple of decades ago. This is about somebody coming and saying, we built an ecosystem, we built an infrastructure, we are building a scalable business, and therefore we feel comfortable enough to take ownership on the process, interact directly with the consumer, and give him a proposition he cannot refuse in the sense of creating value for him. Therefore, we will need, I think the market needs to step out a bit of the box, create new definitions to the diamond, add new layers, mainly about the sustainability aspects, the origin, the provenance, to give more information, but then quantify this information into something that is very clear and not into something that is confusing. I think the 4 Cs was a wonderful tool for decades. Today, it's not serving the purpose anymore. And you don't have to believe me. You have to see when a consumer that buys from any brand or he buys in any cheap store, when he comes to sell his diamond back, he's getting 40, 50% at the best case on his diamond. It's because there is a confusion on the definitions of the 4 Cs. And there is always an argument to say, oh, what I see here is not actually what I see in the diamond. So therefore, I think there is a great time now for all of us as an industry to step up and try to go into territories that are quite unknown for us, but we have to dare more in order to challenge the market.
Can I just ask the audience, how many people in the audience, so I don't make any assumptions, are diamond manufacturers? If you could raise your hand, please, that would be really helpful. I just want to get a sense of how many people who are diamond manufacturers. Not that many of you, okay? All right. The question I wanted to ask you is, how many of you as manufacturers feel that you need to certify your diamond in order to be able to sell it today as polished? Like if you didn't certify your diamond, it would cause a problem for you. Okay, so most of you think that if you manufacture diamonds, you need to certify them with a recognized grading lab. And now another final question, how many of you believe that despite you certifying your diamond, that the certification process commoditizes the diamonds that you're selling? So we've got a paradox. We think that certification, thank you for that participation. So we've got a paradox. People believe certification is necessary, otherwise they won't be able to sell their diamond. But people believe that the certification commoditizes the diamond and potentially doesn't add value. David, how do you resolve that paradox?
So first of all, I agree with that. You've got two aspects of certification. One, it determines value, unfortunately. There's no way around it. So color, clarity, cut grade, and so on, carat weight determines value. I think that's not going to disappear. That's not going to change. But what I think should change is the fact that that has trickled down all the way to consumer and, as many people here said, has commoditized the diamonds. And I think the power needs to go back to the retailer. The previous panel talked about creating trust, the trust between the retailer and the consumer. And the fact that the retailer needs a third party to certify their diamonds, I believe will change over time. The high-end brands don't need it. I believe the rest of the market will go in the same direction, creating their own value proposition. And grading will probably eventually go back to where it actually started, I don't know, 30, 40 years ago or more, as a B2B transaction. Yes, you do need the understanding of what is the grading to transact B2B, but the B2C, I think that should transform into something else, which is more in the hands of the retailer. Each retailer creating its own value proposition, not necessarily centering around the 4 Cs. The 4 Cs is not how you sell a diamond. It's a basic understanding of the value of that diamond, where it needs to be priced, but that isn't the main point of the sale at the retail. Or it shouldn't be.
Do you think that there's actually a situation here, and Bernard, I can come to you back to Swiss watches in a second and use your experience there, but do you think that there's what you're describing? I mean, our industry is fragmented at retail level, and it could be the case that most retailers do not have a strong branding proposition. The leaders do, in terms of the people who drive the marketing, drive the desire. But it's probably fair to say that the majority of diamonds that are sold to the consumer today are not branded. Do you think that for what you're saying to work, there needs to be a wholesale shift towards a branding proposition to the consumer? That's part one of the question. And the second question would then follow on would be, do you think that's even possible? If yes.
Again, in my opinion, the answer is yes. The retail side of the industry is moving and should continue to move to a branding proposition. That's how you create value. Otherwise, in the end, it's just a race to the bottom in terms of price, which is unhealthy for the entire pipeline. So a brand doesn't need to be a high-end brand. You can create a regional brand. You can create a brand that has a certain messaging, a certain story for the consumer. But I definitely believe that retailers today should definitely be focusing a lot of their time and energy on creating that brand proposition to the consumer, because that's the only way to, in my opinion, to maintain the value. In the end, diamonds, basically everyone is selling the similar types of diamonds. You need to create that unique value proposition, and that is by creating your own brand. And so I think that's where a lot of the energy should be. And once you do that, then the grading just becomes a part of the process. It becomes information, data that is used in order to transact, and is used by the retailer in the way that the retailer wants to use it, and not necessarily in a way that is uniform across every retailer, and therefore creating that commoditization. So giving that ability to the retailer to use that information, 4 Cs or additional information about the polished diamond, in order to interact and provide it in the way that the retailer sees fit. So I think that's where the industry should go, and that will move it away from commoditization and more to differentiation, different retailers with different value propositions and moving away from price competition.
Our industry could be potentially too fragmented to pull that off, right? And another model, just to kind of play with this, Bernard, is something that you've talked about, which is Swiss watches, where here it's the brands, the manufacturers of the Swiss watches, they don't always control the retail outlet. That brand is created further upstream in that supply chain, right? Do you see the possibility, maybe through manufacturing technology, maybe through the way grading is, where do you think those brands on the pipeline should exist? Should they apply at the miner level, midstream level, retailer level, or somewhere, or a mix? Where do you think they should be?
I think it's first the retailer, because he goes, in a certain shop, and in general these are a chain, and the names are well known, and I think that's the first reaction of the customer. Think about the retail shop, less about the manufacturer, and even less about the miner. No? But you can include this, include this in the story, that the retailer should in the future tell the customer and explain the origin of the stone, where it is coming from, when it has been mined, maybe the age of the stone. It sounds a bit ridiculous, but for an average consumer, that's a nice thing to tell. It's 1 billion of years, and not everyone knows that. No? And then also, who has polished the stone, where it has been done, which conditions, and these things our customers today, the new generation, wants to know, and I think there the technology can play a role.
Thanks. That's an interesting concept, and I want to go back to you, David, around the issue of traceability, because I think it's worthwhile for everyone here to understand what tracking and traceability means. What does it mean to you, and why do you think it's necessary?
So I think to explain in very simple terms, it's connecting sustainability or the ESG parameters regarding the journey of the diamond to the specific diamond. So if you wanted to be able to talk about where the diamond comes from, how the mines attended to different aspects of environmental issues or local communities, if you are unable to take that finished product and really connect it back to that story, then you have a missing link. So traceability basically enables you to take a specific diamond or a specific collection of diamonds and connect it back to that entire story of the mining, manufacturing, and retail process. So in the end, it's a means to an end. It's not necessarily the final objective, but it enables the retailer to either say internally, it's not necessarily always a story that goes to right down to the consumer. It's sometimes the brand's promise, internal brand's promise, saying, I've done my due diligence, I've checked how my entire supply chain works, and I can come to you as my consumer and promise you that I've done the due diligence without even having to provide any information to the consumer. In other cases, the retailer might want to provide that story or information to the consumer. But I think it starts with that really understanding that supply chain and having that transparency to the entire supply chain, that's where it really starts.
So you think it's really about creating that transparency from mine to retailer as to what's that journey that diamond's been on?
Yes, first of all, for the retailer itself, to have the confidence in where it's come from, not just by declarations along the way, but by actually having real data. And then the second stage, which here I think maybe the jury's still out, or each retailer will have their own opinion, is do I use that information now for the consumer? Do I use it to tell a story? Do I use it to say where it's from or how it was manufactured? Do I use it as part of my narrative to the consumer? That I think the answers will differ from retailer to retailer. Is that an important part? But I think most retailers will say it's important that I know where my goods come from.
David, I've got a lot of questions for you. Please don't be annoyed, Bernard and Raphael. I just want to kind of dig into traceability, as you've done a lot of work in this area. Do you feel that the midstream, as it stands today, is positive about traceability? Is that something that they want, in your experience as a technology service provider?
So in the end, most of the value of traceability ends up at the retail consumer side. And so traceability, to be honest, is somewhat of a headache for the midstream. That's one of the reasons that we've made it as seamless and as scalable as possible for the midstream and working very closely with them so that it doesn't become a pain to be able to implement traceability. But there are, I think, we'll see as we go forward, use cases that the midstream starts to benefit. Just to give you an example, if we look at traceability, you think about it in terms of the whole process from mine to consumer, but being able to track a diamond within a factory or within the midstream also has a lot of value. So there's a lot of aspect of our diamonds switched or replaced during the manufacturing process, so the ability to track those at the many different stages of manufacturing all of a sudden becomes attractive to the midstream as well. So I think we're going to start seeing a shift, not only that the midstream needs to participate in terms of traceability, but will also be able to realize value. So I think we'll start seeing that shift in the upcoming year or two.
You recently announced a partnership with Boucheron.
Yeah.
Why did you do this program? Or maybe even explain a little bit in a couple of sentences what that program is, if you're able to share it, and what you think was the driver behind that program.
So the program basically is we create information about the polished diamonds from the source, starting from where the diamonds come from, which is in this case Namibia, all the way down to the retailer, providing traceability information, provenance information, as well as 4Cs. And maybe it goes back to the question you asked about how do you prevent that becoming a commodity. Okay, so it's another set of information. And basically the way we do it is we enable this to become the retailer's way of delivery. So in Boucheron's case, we work very closely with them, with their marketing teams, with their design teams, in creating a product which in the end is information. You could call it a kind of a report. In the end, a digital report. They went digital only because of sustainability aspects. And created something that is theirs. It is a Boucheron report, powered by Sarine with the Intel inside, enabling them to brand it under their brand, under their recognition, their look and feel, their narrative. And I think that's something very different than what we see today. We look at ourselves in the end as a data provider, enabling, creating information, and providing it to our clients in order for them to be able to use it in the way that best serves their purposes.
Raphael, can I call on you just to comment on what your view is on traceability and what you think it doesn't add to the consumer?
I think traceability is an amazing tool for the industry, but it has to be used with passion. It should not be taken as something that is imposed on us or something that is a challenge. Traceability is opening an opportunity to give incentives. It's incentives to nations that have better governance, to have more value for the diamond than other nations who do not apply the same governance. It's giving incentives to miners, it's giving incentives to the midstream. So traceability has to be used in the right way, and traceability is mainly it's a tool to give the consumer a real view into the value chain of each diamond. And therefore we have to be very innovative in the way that we define our diamond, in order that when the consumer for the first time will get a look inside the process, he has to find a beautiful process. He has to find values that are talking to him in the language that he understands. So therefore, we believe that traceability, blockchain, all the technologies that are applied, they are wonderful tools, but we have to be very careful to use it in the right way and to bring real passion into that process.
Are you arguing, just to put a provocative question, that okay, traceability is an enabler, but what really needs to be looked at is what's the ideal supply chain from a consumer perspective?
Yeah, the consumer doesn't want to see a supply chain. The consumer wants to see value chain. He wants to see what each player in the process added as value to the product that he bought. And if he doesn't find that you're adding value, you are one name too much on the list of the players that he sees on the paper. So therefore, and what is also very important is to invest a lot of time and money in technologies in order to close the black holes in the manufacturing process, in order to guarantee a smooth identification of each stone from polished to rough without having any black holes and having any doubts about the information that is provided.
I'm going to wrap up in the next couple of minutes. I've just got a few more questions just to start to get a view on all of this. The first, let me start with you, David. What do you think the supply chain is going to look like in 5 years from now? Just in a couple of sentences.
I can probably wrap it up in one sentence, a lot shorter. And I think that's going to be critical to, as I said, bring the right product all the way down to the consumer, to the retailer, in the shortest possible time, adapting to changes in terms of demand. So if we can get to a stage that once we identify at the retail side, consumer demand changes and respond to that within, I don't know if I want to say weeks, but just a few months, I think that will create a very much more efficient supply chain. But it's not just a matter of saving time and money. As I said, it's creating more value for the customer, getting him the right product. And I think once we can create a supply chain that gets the right product to the right customer quickly, we'll see our industry being able to expand a lot more. Today, I mean, there are endless parts of the pipeline that, the whole memo system is a great plaster or a great solution, but it's not a good solution. And I think enabling to get the retailer and the consumer the right goods quickly is what we're going to see in terms of the change in supply chain, and that will happen through automative technologies.
So it's a more dynamic, more demand-driven, more responsive, shorter supply chain.
I think our industry has to become demand-driven, and once it is, I think everyone will benefit all the way down from the consumer down to the supplier, to the producers.
My last question for you, Rafi, and then one last question for you, Bernard. Rafi, if you have a clean sheet of paper, from a consumer perspective, what's the most valuable supply chain narrative?
The most, I think what the consumer wants to see, and the only way we can provide to him, he wants to see a flawless process. So in order to have a flawless process, we have to eliminate any conflict of interest between the different actors in the value chain. And that's something that we started to implement. It's to bring transparency into the process, but not transparency in the sake of saying it, but really implementing it. So transparency means that the miner and the midstream and the retailer are sitting together and negotiating the price. And the midstream is basically serving as a market maker. And that's something this industry never had. This industry never had market makers. It has actually an effect of hot potato that is rolling from one place to another and reaching somehow to the customer. But in order for us to sustain our business on the long term, we have to eliminate all those conflicts of interest and have basically a flawless process between all the actors and have no mysteries or no walls that are blocking the flow of information. Data today is the only key for success. And in order for the miner to have the data, for the consumer to have the data, the doors have to be fully open and no walls could be allowed in that process in the future.
Thank you, Raphael. And for you, Bernard, you've got a technology at Sonova that's a game-changing technology. It's very important, it's very key. What would be your message to existing midstream players in terms of what would be your view? What do you think it means for those stakeholders today that are doing the existing manufacturing?
I think the first thing is to see the changes, to see that the time is now ready to look on these new possibilities, new technologies, and to be open to this, and to think about themselves. I can't give you a perfect recipe now, but to think about, okay, where is my business in the future? What should I do today to be ready? Because I would say in the next 5 years, the industry will be different than the last 500 years. Yeah. And we'll see a lot of changes with lab-grown diamonds, with the software technologies today, grading and automatic shaping. These things will change, and the big players from the past will be maybe not anymore the big players in the future, not having anymore the same influence, the same power. We see it, with the lab-grown diamond producers. You can do it again everywhere. No? These machines you can buy, you can create your own diamond, even if you want, in your garage. You don't need so much knowledge. And then the same as with polishing. So at the end, we democratize the diamond manufacturing. And so there will be a lot of competition, new ideas coming up over the next years. I think it will become a very exciting time.
Thank you very much, panelists. I just want to quickly wrap up at 1 or 2 points. One is that it's really interesting that we've heard from 2 of the leading technology providers on what the future could look like and what it means for your business. Look at it as an opportunity as far as possible, rather than looking at it as threatening the status quo is always a positive opportunity. Second of all, the issue of traceability, the fact that it's a necessary component. We probably didn't have the time to explore the narrative aspects of traceability as much as we would have ideally have liked. We've seen things like LVMH leading Aura and that branding narrative around traceability that perhaps can be picked up in the next panel. And then we've also not talked yet about how all these technologies and supply chain dynamics would affect the lab-grown and natural diamond supply chains. But I do want to thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for covering a lot of content in a shorter than expected space of time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to leave the stage from... Okay, thank you.
To cut that one short, but we are very short of time. Everything seems to have taken a bit longer. We're not used to post-COVID breaks taking so long. We're not going to take a break. We're going to change the stage, so we're going to be about 5 minutes. So if anybody needs a comfort break, now is an opportunity to go out, but then please come straight back and we'll get straight into the next panel. So just a comfort break while we change. But I do want to thank this panel. Anish, Bernard, Raphael and David, thank you very much indeed. Big round of applause. Welcome everybody. And this is the final panel. And the job of the final panel is really to look back at what we've heard today, and we've heard a lot today. And we wanted to get what I call the captains of the industry on the same panel to help us try and make sense of everything that we heard today. So let me just give a quick recap of what I heard, and then I'm going to introduce the panelists and get them to give their views on what we've heard today, what we've been through, etc. So we started off in the morning with Ahmed and some very exciting trade numbers showing that we are the #1 trading hub for rough diamonds in the world. Then we've heard from the Angola Minister of Mines. Then we also had a panel from a fireside chat from Bruce Cleaver. Then we went on to a retail panel and heard about the changing consumers' views. And then we've just had a technology panel. And now we've got 6 distinguished people staying on stage who I'm going to introduce individually. Yoram Devash, on my left, is the president of the World Federation of Diamond Bourses. Iris van der Wachen is the executive director of the Responsible Jewelry Council. Ronnie van der Linden is the president of the International Diamond Manufacturers Association. Colin Shah, the chairman of the Gem Jewelry and Export Promotional Council. Edward Asher, the president of the World Diamond Council. And of course, last but not least, Gaetano Cavalieri, the president of CIBJO, the World Jewelry Confederation. And I'm going to start off with Yoram to ask your reflection. Yoram, you represent the World Federation of Diamond Bourses, 29 diamond bourses, 30,000 members globally. What did you make of the sessions today and the future of diamonds as it relates to members of the World Federation?
So good afternoon. Do you hear me? Yes. Okay, so good afternoon. First of all, I would like to thank you, Martin and Ahmed, for a tremendous event. I think it's one of the best I ever had. And I think today that we are 29 bourses And as you know, there are two other countries that would like to join us. That it's Angola and Qatar that's supposed to visit us in the president meeting this week, saying everything. Although a lot is going to the online, but still the diamond exchange, the spirit, the family, the cooperation between the friends that work together, the technology that we give the members, it's very, very important. So from my point of view, all those were difficult years, few years before, the future looked very bright for the diamond industry.
Good. Thanks very much, Yoram. Turning to Iris. Iris, you're the Responsible Jewellery Council, set up 17 years ago. I remember it well. You've done a remarkable job of defining a standard of responsible practices and evidencing it from mine to retail. Tell me, what did you make of the retail panel with the fascinating discussions with Beryl and with Shamla and with Stephen Lucia?
Well, does everyone hear me? Okay.
Yep.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank, of course, Dmcc and Mr. Ahmed bin Sulayem for inviting us today and also for the support to the Responsible Jewelry Council. Martin, for me, it's very clear. The future of the diamond industry is about transparency and trust and sustainability. I think companies that will not integrate that at the heart of their business strategy will really opt out. They will not be in a few years. And I think we heard through the whole conversation today that it is all about consumer confidence. And consumer confidence is only based on responsible business practices. So actually, I think that this movement will only continue, and Bruce Cleaver spoke about it. Also, Sergei Ivanov from Alrosa spoke about it. Is indeed also about ESG, because sometimes I'm a bit concerned when I hear some of these arguments today that we are behind. The ESG movement is continuing. It's access to capital. It's also about trust again, and I think we have to see as an industry that we are ready and future-proof to be able to do this. And only for one reason, because we are an industry of beauty and emotions, and we have to show that those emotions behind that product is really a process of integrity and a process of care for people and purpose.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Iris. Ronnie, follow that up. No, Ronnie, you're the president of the Diamond Manufacturers Association. International Diamond. And there was a fascinating panel we just had, which went on about automation and the automation in manufacturing. How do you see technology really influencing and changing the way manufacturing happens and operates?
Right. So let me echo the words of Yoram and Iris. Thank you very much for the invite and the words of wisdom from everybody earlier. So I'll tell you, I look at technology and we look at where we are today. We didn't have the technology that we have today and that we're using, for instance, the sarin. So technology evolves and we will be using it. And if you look at the factories, whether they're in India, even in Belgium, or even the United States, my factory, we advance our technology constantly. We need to stay in front of everything that's going on. So without technology, we'd be behind the scenes. I think it was excellent the way they spoke. We'll all use for our own companies what we see fit.
Okay, great. Colin, moving to you, chairman of the JGEPC. We've just signed a free trade agreement between UAE and India, which we're all very excited about. Tell us a little bit about that and how you see that influence the future of the diamond industry between UAE and India.
So, good question. And the UAE trade treaty is something that our Prime Minister himself was very passionately working towards, including the Commerce Ministry, and then there was a smaller committee of us, industry-wise, which very closely worked with the UAE counterpart. Now, one of the things which our PM is trying to do, especially, is he's taken on this ambitious target of $400 billion worth of exports out of India. And we've all realized that a critical part of increasing our exports out of India are market access. So the government has been pursuing trade treaties with most of our large trading partners. When it comes to the gems and jewelry industry, the markets that we are pursuing are US, UAE, Canada, UK and Australia, which are all large markets for gems and jewelry. And even though the duties were not as large as maybe you're used to in some of the other industries, in a business like ours, like even the 5% duty which was there in the UAE was large enough for it to be a disincentive. And that actually, our exports in gold jewelry, they went down by $7 billion in the last 3-4 years when the duty was imposed. So we're very hopeful that this year itself, we'll see an upsurge of exports by nearly $5 billion because of this trade agreement. What it does, and I'll just take a few seconds to explain this, is what the Indian government is hoping is that anybody and everybody in our sector, and we're already seeing it on the rough side and the polished diamond side, will have their sales and distribution offices from Dubai. Your manufacturing will continue to be in India because it's labor intensive and all the reasons that we have to make India competitive. But sales and distribution will happen through Dubai for, again, a variety of reasons. Emirates flies practically all over the world, easy access to most of the large markets. So it makes sense for a company to have sales over here, manufacturing in India. You get the tax benefits which obviously Dubai has to offer. And with the duty incentive, it's incredible. You could, have all the, the wonderful life of Dubai, and you have the tax benefits, and you're able to have a brilliant quality of life. So,
Good.
that's the whole vision behind the India-UAE trade.
So it's really a genuine win-win situation then between India and the UAE.
Yeah.
So, and we've seen that trend with many companies setting up here in Dubai and setting up their sales and distribution out of Dubai. So you see that trend continuing.
Yes, definitely.
Great.
That's the vision. So, now in the next 2-3 quarters, I guess we'll all see it turning in. By the time we all come back for this next year, we'll know.
I was going to say, last time we talked about disruption and then we didn't see what happened. But anyway. Edward, if I can turn to you, President of the World Diamond Council. You've recently upgraded the system of warranties. Can you maybe tell the audience a little bit about that system of warranties for self-assessment required and the wonderful work the WDC does for the Kimberley process?
Thank you, Martin. The World Diamond Council consists out of the complete diamond industry, mining, polishing, wholesale, retail, and we represent all of you at the Kimberley process. And everything we do together as an industry is based on the Kimberley process and on the responsibility of keeping conflict diamonds out of the mainstream of rough diamonds. We have had since 2003 the system of warranties which you all use and all know. That has been revised over the last couple of years and now is asking you to do a self-assessment and make sure that you do the due diligence and increase the knowledge about what we do and how to keep your company according to the rules and procedures and the system of warranties. And that's something we recently started rolling out, and we will do so in the next few years intensively. And it is important that everybody is doing this self-assessment so that you can show to your customers that you have done the right thing and adhere to the right principles of due diligence according to the rules and procedures not only of the World Diamond Council but also of the OECD.
And Edward, it applies to who? Does it apply just to rough traders or is it everybody in the industry?
It applies to everybody in the diamond industry.
So even a retailer would have to do a self-assessment?
Retailers are welcome to do the same because in that way they can show their customers. And it's all to do with, of course, consumer confidence And this is a warranty, a chain of warranties, and it comes from the mine to the retailer, from the mine to the ref manufacturer, the polisher, the wholesaler, the jewelry manufacturer, and then to the retailer. And in the end, it is proof for the consumer.
Good. Thanks very much. Gaetano, President of CIBJO. You're a custodian, CIBJO is the custodian of the Blue Books and has done some excellent work on the webinars, especially during the COVID breakdown. So I want to thank you on behalf of the industry to keep us entertained. You've also been a great advocate for sustainability and education. Just talk to us about how you see the future of the diamonds from an educational perspective, about learning about compliance and learning about some of the requirements which are required now for companies.
I would say that the future of the diamond industry, as well the jewelry industry, will be very brilliant, if I could say that. I don't see any possible negative impact. On the contrary, I mean, we have seen that during this incredible and terrible pandemic, the diamond and jewelry industry has acted and proacted very well. The people has been able to make adjustments or reconversion we have seen during this past 2 years, not only because the webinar, but the use of the technological tools such as internet. We all have met in Zooms or the different platforms, and we're now here enjoying in person after 2 years. I see that our webinars has been followed by many thousands of people. I'm very happy about that. And this obviously has been our contribution, and I hope will be our contribution to the industry with whatever we can supply. So
Good.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Gaetano. Coming back to your room. So you said that we're going to have 2 new bourses, potentially. Tell me, what is your, when somebody would say, what is the use of a bourse these days? Everybody does business in their own offices or through tenders. They're not trading on the floor like they used to do. How are the bourses evolving to keep track of the speed of which the diamond transactions are happening? What are you doing to make sure that the World Federation stays relevant to the diamond industry?
First of all, as you know, we have the arbitration. And we don't use it a lot, and I'm happy with that. But I think the reason that people, when they do it, and you know, the transaction in our business is billions, between Dubai to India, between Israel to India, between Antwerpen, it's billions. And the reason we don't have too much arbitration, because people are honest, we have very good community from one side, from the other side, they know that it's very fast, they can be in arbitration, and it's cut clear after 2 weeks, 1 month. It's not like in court that it can take years. I can give you an example from Israel Diamond Exchange, where I serve as a president. When we went to the authorities to sign new agreement, new tax agreement, we represent more than 3,000 members. And we have many difficulties, but in the end of the day, when you're coming in the front of 3,000 members, the government, the authorities look at you totally different. So we have our values, we have our community. It's totally, in Israel, you know, we have a joke that if you're standing in the 20th floor and waiting for the elevator and saying to your friend that you bought today oval HSI2 -20, you get into the floor, you coming to second floor, for example, going out, everybody knows what the price you sold the oval or what price you bought. Everybody knows everything, but it's not only about room, it's about technology, about the price of the rough, about the tenders. So the community, especially in our business, is very important. And if I may add, Martin, about what Iris said, we have diamond, If you open Get Diamond or Rappaport, you have 1.5, 1.6, 1.7 million diamond. Diamond you can find always. You can pay another 1 point, another 2 point, no problem. The issue is the trust. This is the word, and the system of warranties, and the trust, and the transparency. This is the main issue, the main goal in our business, and it's very, very important. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Iris, how do you respond to that? Because it is about trust, and you've created a mechanism to evidence that trust. Tell us more about the system of the evidencing mechanism RJC has, and what you're doing to promote that in the industry.
Well, first of all, for those of you that do not know about the Responsible Jewelry Council, as Martin said, we were founded in 2005 with 14 founding members from mining to retail. And today I'm proud to say we almost have 1,600 members in 71 countries and 60% smaller enterprises. So it really shows when in 2005 those leaders had a pioneer vision to create a standard-setting body to deliver that trust, that this was definitely a mechanism that is functioning. And what does that mean concretely? Well, it means is that we have CEOs and leaders from different enterprises around the world that come to the Responsible Jewelry Council and they apply to become RJC certified. And what that means is that they commit. They commit to what we call a code of practices. And this code is very robust. And what do I mean by that? It's fit for purpose because it is really aligned with the most updated regulations. And so that's very important. When companies come to us, we're really giving them a tool to help integrate sustainability. And we talked about defining sustainability, and you know, there's a lot of definitions. Sometimes I always say, it's about dignity, isn't it? It's about decency. It's about human rights. It's about labor practices. It's about climate action. But it's also about product integrity. You don't want that consumer to walk into a store, for example, and I'll give an example of, at Asher, and a diamond, for example, is said to be sold as a natural diamond, and it's a synthetic. So product integrity is super critical. And that's the strength of the code of the RJC, because we have all of those elements. And actually, when a company commits, it has 2 years for certification. And one comment I wanted to make, Martin, and I think that's really good. First of all, actually we saw, despite COVID, we saw actually almost 20% growth and many small enterprises. And we're getting a lot of questions from young designers. And they're thinking even a step further. When they start creating, they start to think about the materials they use. They think about circular models. They're looking much deeper into their supply chain. So this movement is continuing. And we, as RJC, are here to support the whole industry. And one final comment I want to also make is, we should not forget that everything around the Responsible Jewelry Council, so all the toolkits, all the educational material, is free available on our website. So even if you do not decide to become an RJC member, which I actually would recommend you do, you still have all the material and you can still join many of our webinars. So this is definitely a call for action to take sustainability as a priority to deliver that trust that we need to deliver the promise to our consumer.
Thanks, Iris. I mean, when you think about sustainability and you go down the extremities of sustainability and traceability, and we talked a lot about lab-grown diamonds earlier on. How do you see, I'm going to move it actually over to Ronnie to say, what do you say to your members who want to do lab-grown diamonds instead of natural diamonds? Because from a sustainability perspective and also from a profitability perspective, maybe there's a better market. And I'll let Iris also come in as well if she wants to.
So there's a couple of things that I want to say just before we get going. And IDMA is very proud to have been the first diamond organization to join the Council of Responsible Jewelry Practices, now the RJC, and also, along with our WFDB and CIBJO partners, formed the World Diamond Council. So let's talk about the sustainability that you're mentioning, lab-grown diamonds. We found during COVID How many of the companies, and I'm going to use this as an example to my Indian colleagues in the audience, in 2007 I was invited to speak at Minds to Market. I was invited to speak about lab-grown diamonds. Well, let me tell you, the silence that you hear in this room is the same silence I received with a wide audience when I brought up lab-grown diamonds. Nobody, except around the corner, came to talk to me about it. I was involved with lab-grown since 1999, 2000 Genesis Corp. We come in to Lightbox, as it was mentioned earlier. De Beers acknowledging the existence of lab-grown diamonds, the prices taking a ground. And what happens? During difficult times like COVID and elsewhere, our partners, our colleagues out there, got involved with lab-grown diamonds. Why? To keep their factories operating, so not to have a repeat of the 2008-2009 crisis. So what do I say for those that, like was stated earlier, as Beryl said, we need to work together. And lab-grown diamonds will have its position in the industry from now throughout the future. No question about it. So if they want to be in it, be in it. But when you talk about lab-grown diamonds, talk about lab-grown diamonds and what they are, not what they're not. That's very important for everyone.
Good.
And I do that even today with our lab-grown company.
Good. Iris, you want to?
Yeah, I definitely support what Ronnie is saying. You know, many times I get this question, so Iris, what's your preference, you know, natural diamonds or lab-grown materials? And I always say it's a consumer's choice. And I think, and you also said it, they can coexist. But what is very dangerous is when false claims are made, that one is more sustainable than the other. And for the past months, I've been following, you know, very much what's being written about it, and that causes concern, because at that moment, you're not educating the consumer correctly. And that's why education is so critical. And I mean, Dr. Gaetano Cavaliere is here in the panel because we believe it is so important to educate that consumer. So I believe it's really about product integrity and being very honest and authentic about what the product really means to the consumer.
Martin, unfounded claims hurts everyone.
Yeah. And maybe I can ask Gaetano, sorry, I'm going to come back to both Colin and Edward a bit, but just on that, Gaetano, you're leading a lot of effort on education, etc. What is your view about some of the claims, etc.?
Well, education is something that is very important, and from our perspective, means the entire industry, is essential that we make every effort in order to give the tools not only to our members but to the entire industry. We are talking about the SDGs, or I mean, as RJC is doing, and not only RJC, we are there to support and improve all this activity. We are now talking about blockchain and also the next stage, metaverse, that everybody is wondering what does it mean, including me when I heard this word for the first time. But we certainly have to improve our efforts in order to give the tools, not because we pretend to educate, we certainly not, but we have to give the tool, and is important in order that our members, in terms of members of the industry, can show how good they are in order to maintain, improve the consumer confidence.
Good, thank you. Edward, I want to ask you a question about the work you do with the Kimberley process and conflict diamonds. And, you know, I think we're all grateful for work WDC does in representing the industry for the Kimberley process, which has been successful, but it is still facing criticism because there are still some human rights abuses going on in Africa and elsewhere. So what do you say to some of the criticism about the Kimberley process? And do you think if we are too vocal about focusing on the small PK, as we discussed yesterday, that we actually miss the picture and drive people the unintended consequences of where we would drive people.
We understand the criticism on the KP because, first of all, we are ourselves critical in the World Diamond Council about the Kimberley process, because the Kimberley process over the last, since its existence, has not changed the definition of conflict diamonds. And that means that the subject of violations of human rights is there not included. This is only diamonds in the hands of rebel movements trying to overthrow the government. So what has happened is we built in the industry layer upon layer to add to the basis of the KP. The KP is the basis. On top of that, we have first of all the system of warranties. We have the systems of some of the large companies, Alrosa, De Beers, Signet and others. And in this way we can build on what is missing in the KP. I do not expect that the definition of conflict diamonds will be changed in the very near future. But what we do with building upon it is making sure that the diamonds are responsibly sourced and with respect for human rights. Another observation I have when I was listening to various panels is what we all do together is on the background of the diamond industry. Well, Rafe this morning said something which is important to us all. We are trying to sell an aspirational dream. We are selling a product of beauty. And sometimes in all these technical discussions and developments about new technology, about system of warranties, about traceability, that is not the first thing on the consumer's mind, as she explained. It is about emotion. And it is what we do at the background is to protect everything we have. But on the foreground, this is what we are selling, a thing of beauty and a thing with an emotional product. And that goes, in my opinion, extremely well with the natural diamond and the natural diamond industry, where the diamonds come from the mines, and we must make sure that they are not only responsible sourced, but with respect of human rights. And that's the mandate of the World Diamond Council, but that's the mandate of us all together here.
Good, thank you very much. Very well said, Edward. Colin, if I can come to you and ask you for an Indian perspective on lab-grown diamonds. Obviously, there's a lot of lab-grown diamonds being made in India and also being cut and polished in India. What is the JEPC's view on lab-grown diamonds and natural diamonds, and how are you managing that issue?
So GJPC has close to 8,000 members, and we represent I guess everything and anything in gems and jewelry industry. So it ranges from diamonds, gemstones, lab-grown diamonds, diamond jewelry, gold jewelry, silver jewelry, machinery manufacturers, alloys. So lab-grown for us is one more sector that we promote amongst our entire gamut or basket of membership which is there. Having said that, it's interesting, but see, I'll give you like several perspectives. One is lab-grown is definitely here to stay, and we've heard it, I guess, over the last 2-3 years, that it's not only here to stay, but it's growing. So, in India, our exports used to be $100 million of lab-grown 3 years back, which has grown to $1 billion this year. So it grew 10x in 3 years. And we all feel at the current rate of growth which it's showing, and the number of machines which have been installed in Gujarat and in Maharashtra, both places, it will be a $3 to $5 billion industry in the next 3 to 5 years. So that's definitely happening. Secondly, and interestingly, from the India perspective and from the GJPC perspective, mining in terms of carats is 10, 15, 20% down, depending on the miner you speak to. So that workforce which used to be employed in the natural diamond side has been effectively employed on the lab-grown side, because there's that much more opportunity to cut and polish lab-grown diamonds. And not only cut and polish lab-grown diamonds, but it's a huge employment generator even for jewelry manufacture, sorting, all the other ancillary services which go with anyone in the gems and jewelry trade. So in terms of employment generation, it's good for the country. In terms of it coming at the right time, because natural diamonds, the Argyle mine closed down, and that obviously was produced in a large way in India. So we've been able to absorb that, the workers over there. And lastly, but not the least, as the tech gets, manufactured in India more, it will be a net forex earner for the country, because, then we're not so dependent on imports. And in a country like India, where we're dependent for energy also, and gold is the second largest import for our industry, and diamonds also traditionally has been $20 billion import of rough diamonds. The government is looking at it quite positively, that this may be an industry which is a net foreign exchange earner. So in terms of forex, in terms of employment, it's a good sector.
Good.
And in terms of demand, it is coexisting with the natural diamond industry. We've seen that happen in the last 1 year. So I guess even that debate is, rested, so as to say. So it's not cannibalizing the natural business, it's generating employment, it's good for the country, I think, in all ways. So it's good for GJPC, in terms of promoting as a sector.
Yeah. Thank you, Colin. And I definitely have heard many people say, with a shortage of diamonds post-COVID and a rapid demand, the fact that you could actually also manufacture lab-grown diamonds has helped many factories get through the shortage, etc. Yoram, I'm going to turn to you on lab-grown diamonds for WFDB. What is the WFDB's position on lab-grown diamonds? What do you say to your members who see great business opportunities, as Colin was describing, in lab-grown diamonds? What are the criteria for managing and dealing with lab-grown diamonds within the World Federation?
Well, I think we have a different product here. I want to remind you, and I have to be honest with that 3 years ago here in Dubai, we discussed about this, and as a president of Israel Diamond Exchange, we make 3 films that we pay for them. And if you remember, we sent them all over the world, in YouTube, in all the social media, in the same day, all the 29 bourses. Today, I see it differently. And we are saying only donkey don't change his mind. Yes, they are here, and they are here to stay. The gap today between the price of lab-grown and natural diamond is around for the retailer, it's almost the same. It's not the same, but the difference is not big. For us, as dealers, the difference is 70-80%. In the minute, the difference will be 70-80% in the store, in the retailer, it will be totally separate. And this is the process, and it's going to this way. And this is a totally different product. If people can make money with that, it's okay by me, and I'm sure many of the audience or some of the audience are doing. Of course, as we discussed with Iris before, and by the way, all those issues that you mentioned are our issue for the president meeting for the Thursday and Friday. And full transparency with the synthetic diamond, with lab-grown, this is the most important issue from my point of view.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Yoram. I'm going to jump over, I'll come back to you, Iris, but Ronnie, you're American. You live in New York. You're a proud American, drive a Harley Davidson.
I do.
Do you see a future where you could be growing lab-grown diamonds in America, and with the Sonova technology, cutting and polishing diamonds in America, and having a mined, cut and polished diamond from America? Do you see that as something that may be of interest?
I think you stated it correctly. Definitely of interest. Don't have a globe. And I will say to you that one of your former colleagues, Chris Ryder, 15 years ago at Mines to Market in India, when I spoke about lab-grown, said everybody in 25 years will talk about it. And we were talking about the technology, as you're stating now. Do I see it? Yes. I have a factory in the United States. We have colleagues here that are from the US with some factories. And as you know, New York used to be one of the premier manufacturing centers. We are no longer. A gentleman by the name of Walter David, many years ago, when I tell you many, in the 90s, took 5 of us to a space and said, we need to automate. We need to put peerless machines in order for New York to be competitive. It never happened. Peerless were the automatic machines at the time, for everybody that doesn't know about peerless. If we had listened and advanced ourselves with that technology, we might still have a manufacturing center in New York. So yes, do I see it? Do I have a crystal ball and say, yep, we're gonna, I can see this in the future? Yeah, I would say that I'm one of the guys that would be interested for the shop, and I think others out here would do it as well. 100%.
Good, thank you. Colin, I'm going to come to you. What was your take on the technology panel, the fully automation potential of diamond manufacturing? How do you see that? Obviously, India employs a lot of people in the diamond sector manufacturing. How do you see the technology affecting India?
See, I'm sure all of you all over here and mostly everyone in the audience has traveled to India, I guess, in the last few years. And if you see our industry, and not only the industry, but the entire country, and, I guess has transformed in the last 2-3 years from being very labor intensive to becoming very, very tech oriented. So we've, I guess, moved from left to right very quickly. And especially if you take our trade, whether it's on the diamond side, gemstone side, or even the jewelry side, I guess there's any tech in the world which is happening, it's there in India. Yeah. If you see any of the factories and offices. So having said that, I think when you speak to most of the entrepreneurs, our members on our side, they're investing heavily in tech. And everyone's going super digital. Everyone's recognized and realized that, I guess e-commerce is the future. Believe it or not, AI has come already in a big way. Machine learning has come in a big way. As GJPC, we're doing several projects. Actually, we're working very closely with IIT in Powai. So where we're actually setting up a center of excellence with a lot of research, with some engineers over there on how to improve casting techniques, how to predict better what SKUs will run at retail, where a lot of manufacturers and retailers have started sharing their data. So big data, like even they said, is the future, and I mean, we completely believe in it. And as council and the government, we've actually taken a lot of initiatives, I would say, in the last few years in that direction, in how we can, I guess, waste less, because what most of us landed up doing is spending a lot of money on product development, which is like a high cost, whether it's on the diamonds or the jewelry side. And what AI and machine learning is teaching us is how to reduce that cost. So that's happening for sure. And believe it or not, even robos, on the factory front. So if you come to some of the factories who've just started implementing it, they're actually using it for a lot of processes on the diamond and the jewelry side. So, I'm seeing that happen for sure. And further to, something I just wanted to add to the previous question, and, especially on the compliance front. So, and for benefit of, I guess, the audience over here, is GJPC is the only authority now in India to issue the KP certificate. So any rough which comes to India, the KP can be only, issued by the council. So further to that, the council is taking the whole job of doing the KYC extremely seriously. Not that it wasn't doing it seriously, it was always doing it, but now we've taken it some notches higher. And we've been working very closely with WDC, IDMA, I guess everyone, and completely agree with everyone over here that I guess this whole process of KP and how do we, I guess make it more important in the world, council is totally for it. So, just wanted to add.
Thank you for that, and actually that's really important. And that's going to actually just bring me on back to Edward. From the World Diamond Council, you talked about the new system of warranties and the self-assessment. You've also, in the system of warranties, now included anti-money laundering, anti-corruption, fair labour practices, etc. What do you say to the comments? Is that a bit of mission creep? The Kimberley process was always set up to deal with conflict diamonds, and now we're adding on extra components to the system of warranties. How would you respond to that, Edward?
I'm happy with that mission creep, actually. it's a great step forward. And it was during the last plenary in Moscow that the 7 principles of responsible sourcing, which include these steps, was accepted as a declaration. And later we saw already that the government of India was using it when they said that rough diamond imports were centralized through the Gem and Jewelry Export Promotion Council, and one of the reasons was this declaration. But what I see in the discussion that we had so far is that new technologies that we heard about is also an opportunity for the benefication, because the supply chain will shorten, and that means that some African countries will have an opportunity. Another development that I see is a 2-tier market. What do I mean with that? I mean, not all diamonds are exactly traceable like people who have sites or contract with mining companies direct. There are a lot of diamonds in the world that are conflict-free, but not in a blockchain and not with a brand. And some of the brands have traceability in blockchains, have a guarantee from big mining companies, but a lot of diamonds have not. I see a price difference between those diamonds and the other ones. Is that bad or good? I see it as an opportunity also, because diamonds that are relatively cheaper than the others, but are conflict-free, offer an opportunity for a lot of diamantaires to be a little bit more competitive. So the 2-tier market, which I discussed also during the Kimberley process when certain producing countries were not happy to include human rights, is something that I think is unavoidable, and that for the diamond industry might also be an opportunity of competition.
Thank you, Edward.
To answer the question, I see that the introduction of the 7 principles, including human rights, including anti-money laundering, anti-corruption, environment building, community building. You call it mission creep, I call it progress in the World Diamond Council and the Kimberley process.
Fantastic. Thank you. Very, very eloquent. Iris, moving on to you, with following on from what Edward was just saying, especially about the 2-tier system for diamonds. Do you see RJC members and non-members as potentially creating some tiers in the diamond industry, or do you see it more of a level playing field?
Well, first of all, for people that know me, I believe in partnership and collaboration. So I think it's a risk from a trust perspective to have a 2-tier market. It's something else if we talk about the commercials and premiums. So I think we have to see really that we bring the whole industry along on the journey, because at the end of the day, we're a connected supply chain. And if there's a bottleneck and there's a contamination, it will have a ripple effect on the whole reputation of the industry. That being said, I do believe that the RJC has a critical role together with all these organizations, and definitely also in partnership with CIPJO to continue to educate and give tools on issues that are important. And then I'm thinking about human rights due diligence, climate action, product integrity, and also being able to show that narrative, tell your story. And how can you tell that story? Through measurable data. And I agree that we are an industry of beauty and we're an industry of mystery. We have to keep the dream alive, but behind that mystery does need to be transparency. So I think it's finding that right balance between mystery and transparency. And that needs, authentic proof points. I believe this is really the decade of the consumer, and that trust is at the heart of everything that we should do.
Thank you. And I'm going to leave the last word. I'm going to start wrapping up now. So I want to leave the last word to Gaetano right at the end. I said last but not least. There was a reason I set you at the end. Just what's your view about what's just been said?
Well, I think that, first of all, it's been very interesting listening all the day, the conference, and listening to the different point of view. What I would recommend is that the industry has to go forward into what is the responsible activities, meaning act with great responsibility as it has been done up to now, improve it. Under the CIPSO point of view, we are working very hard on that with the agreement that we have done, so we will go to educational program, as I said previously. We are very happily working with the World Diamond Council, with ITMA, with the Gems and Jewelry Export Promotion Council, RJC, and WDC. And of course, we are taking care of activities done in the LBMA for metals or OECD, and obviously we are very, very proud to be part of the United Nations Economic and Social Council. But overall, we are truly believer that this industry will go forward with great performances in the future. We truly believe that we can do also much more and much better. So we have room to improve our performances in the future. But we are there to support this industry. And this is an example that you at Dubai Diamond Conference have done this wonderful job, gathering all together here today in order to spread out what we think and what we are doing worldwide. So thank you very much for that.
Well, thank you very much. And on that note, I would like to thank all the panelists on stage for their contribution. Sorry that time was a little bit short, but we did manage to fit it all in. A round of applause, please. And ladies and gentlemen, that is a bit of a wrap. We've got a gala dinner coming up tonight, which is going to, the doors are going to open at 6:30, and we would like everybody to be seated just after 7 o'clock. Although, judging on the number of people coming, I think that's probably quite optimistic. But I think that we would like to thank everybody for coming. It's been a really fascinating day. There's been lots of conversations, and I look forward to continuing those conversations this evening, and actually throughout the whole of the week. I will just remind everyone that tomorrow there is the JGT, the Jewelry, Gems and Technology Dubai show, starting tomorrow at the Dubai World Trade Center in the DIFC. For those interested, there's also the Botswana Investment Forum tomorrow morning, and Angola. What did I say? Oh, no, Angola. I'm very sorry. It's the second time. From Angola. And then we also have tomorrow afternoon in the Almaz Tower the opening of the Israeli Diamond Exchange that we will be very proud to do officially. Finally, as Yoram and Ronnie mentioned, the World Federation of Diamond Bourses and International Diamond Manufacturers Associations are having their presidents' meeting on Thursday in Almaz Tower. There is an opening ceremony and an opening discussion panel happening, and we would welcome anybody who's attended the Diamond Conference to also attend that. It starts at 10:30 in the morning, so if you've got a pass, your pass will get you into that. Please register, just so that we can keep track of everything. And with that, I would like to say thank you very much to everybody, and I will see you tonight at the gala dinner.